Hello? Welcome to another video on our channel. Here we translate testimonies from people who have had near-death experiences and other spiritual experiences. Today we are going to know the story of Liselott Winter. She says she had several near-death experiences and saw the future. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. Leave a comment with your name and city. Now let's listen to Liselott's testimony. Hey guys, my name is Liselott Winter, but you can call me Lisa. I'm 28 years old and from Freiburg, a beautiful city in southwest Germany. You know those cities that look like they came out of a fairy tale? Well, Freiburg is like that. We have an incredible mix of lush nature with a rich medieval history. But I'm not here to just talk about my city. In fact, I want to share with you something much deeper and more personal. Since I was very little, I've had experiences that, well, let's just say they're not the kind you share at happy hour with your friends, you know? These are things that defy everything most people consider normal or real. These experiences shaped who I am today, and believe me, it was not an easy journey. I currently work as a therapist here in Freiburg. I love my work, but I always felt like there was something more, something bigger waiting for me. And this has everything to do with the experiences I've had throughout my life. Look, I know that what I'm about to tell you may seem crazy to some. There are people who might think, this girl has been watching too many science fiction movies, or she must have eaten hallucinogenic mushrooms. But I can guarantee it's nothing like that. What I experienced is as real to me as the ground I walk on every day. So if you're ready, I want to take you on a trip. A journey that began when I was just 3 years old and continues to this day. It's a journey that took me beyond the limits of what we call reality, made me question everything I thought I knew about life and death, and showed me that there is so much more to the universe than we can see or touch. Are you ready? Because believe me, what's coming will shake your structures. But don't worry, I promise to be gentle. After all, I've also been on the other side, thinking I knew everything about how the world works. Little did I know how much I was about to learn. The first near-death experience. It all started when I was just 3 years old. It was one of those perfect days, you know? The sun was shining brighter than ever, and I remember running through the garden of our house, feeling a joy that I couldn't explain. It was as if every flower, every leaf, every ray of sun was calling me to play. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. He was no longer in the garden. I saw myself walking through streets made of light. Yes, you heard it right. Streets of lights. It was as if I had been transported to a completely different place, a place that didn't belong to our world. The strangest thing is that, even though I was a little child, I didn't feel scared. In fact, I felt lighter than ever, as if my body was made of pure energy. The streets glowed with a soft, almost welcoming light. And all around me, well, all around me were beings. Not people like you and me, but beings made of light. These beings looked at me in a way, how can I explain? It was a look full of love, you know? A type of affection that cannot be described in words. It was as if they had known me forever, as if they were happy to see me again. And then, one of these beings approached me. He seemed different from the others, like he was more important, you know? He started talking to me, but not with words. It was more like his thoughts went directly into my head. This being told me that I had reached a state of light, and that he was congratulating me on this. But here comes the confusing part. He explained that I had died too young, without facing any real challenges in life. That's why it had been easy for me to reach that state of light. I confess I was a little angry about this. After all, I was in an incredible place, surrounded by beings of light, feeling happier than ever. Why would I want to go back? But the being insisted. He said I needed to return to Earth, that I still had a lot to learn and experience. Deep down, even with all the happiness I felt there was a curiosity, a desire to know what I hadn't yet experienced. So, somewhat reluctantly, I agreed to go back. But not before making a request. I wanted to return to a family with more money and who understood spirituality. And you know what's craziest? This request came true. But that's a story for another time. What matters is that suddenly, I found myself back in the garden, as if nothing had happened. But I knew deep down that something had changed forever, growing with the inexplicable. After that first experience at age 3, my life was never the same. Of course, to those who saw me from the outside, I was just a normal little girl growing up in Freiburg. But inside I carried a huge secret. Just imagine, a child trying to understand why he had memories of a place made of light, of glowing beings, and of conversations about life and death. Not exactly the kind of thing you tell your classmates on the playground, right? My mother, Greta, was a teacher, and luckily, a very open-minded person. When I started talking about my visions and strange dreams, instead of telling me it was just my imagination, she listened. She didn't completely understand, but she never made me feel weird or wrong about it. As I got older, I started participating in children's church. But, unlike the other kids who were there just because their parents told them to, I had a real fascination with it all. Stories about angels, miracles, and the spiritual world. For me, they weren't just stories. It was as if I had an internal knowledge that made me connect with everything in a very deep way. It was at this time that I met Anneliese Weber. She was kind of a spiritual figure in our community. A lot of people thought she was a little crazy, you know? Those ladies who talk to plants and swear they see auras. But for me, she was a true angel. Anneliese was the first person, outside of my family, with whom I felt comfortable sharing my experiences. And not only did she believe in me, she helped me better understand what was happening. She taught me about meditation, about listening to my intuition, and showed me that being different wasn't a bad thing. Of course, not everything was rosy. At school, I was the weird girl, the one who sometimes looked distant, as if she were in another world. And, well, I kind of was. I had few friends, but the ones I did have were really special. One of them was Johann Meyer. Man, Johann was the opposite of me in many ways. He was all straight-laced, rational, one of those people who needs to be seen to be believed. But you know what's amazing? He never stopped being my friend because of my crazy things. He doubted everything I said, of course, but he was always there to listen to me. Growing up like that wasn't easy. I felt torn between two worlds. The normal world that everyone saw and this other world that only I seemed to see. But little by little I learned to balance things, understanding that these experiences were a gift, not a curse. And you know what? It was this balance that led me to choose psychology as a career. I wanted to better understand the human mind. I wanted to help other people who might be going through experiences similar to mine. Little did I know that the universe still had many surprises in store for me. The second near-death experience. When I was 14, I had my second near-death experience. It was during a physical education class at school. We were running on a super hot afternoon. I was never very athletic, you know? So after a few laps on the track, I was already exhausted. I sat down on a rock to catch my breath, and that's when it all started. Suddenly, I felt as if 1,000 threads of consciousness were coming out of my soul. It's hard to explain, but it was like every part of my being was expanding in every direction. Then came a cramp. But not a normal cramp, the kind we have from time to time. It was such intense pain that I thought I was going to pass out. And then, as quickly as it started, the pain was gone. In its place came an emptiness, a total void. When I opened my eyes, I realized that I was no longer in my body. I could see myself sitting on the rock, but I was also elsewhere. It was a huge, empty space. There was nothing there, no light, no sound, nothing. But strangely, I didn't feel afraid. In this place, there was no pain. In fact, there was no sensation at all. It was like I was in a giant waiting room, except there was nothing to do but wait. Wait for what? I didn't know. Maybe wait to get back to my body, or maybe go somewhere else. Time seemed to not exist there. I can't tell if I stayed in that state for seconds, minutes, or hours. But suddenly, without warning, I found myself back in my body. I was sitting on the rock again, in the middle of physical education class. I looked around, a little confused. My classmates were still running. The teacher was still shouting instructions. It was as if nothing had happened. But for me, to me it seemed like I had spent an eternity away from there. I was very embarrassed. I thought everyone had realized I had been missing for a while. But apparently, no one noticed anything strange. For the rest of the world, I had only stopped to rest for a few minutes. This experience was very different from the first. I didn't see beings of light. I didn't walk through shining streets. It was something more empty, more lonely, but somehow equally deep and meaningful. It took me weeks to process what had happened. I tried to talk to Johan about it, but he just laughed and said I must have fainted from the heat. Annalisa was more understanding. She told me that sometimes our souls need time out of the body to readjust. I don't know exactly what happened that day, but I know it was real. And I know that in some way it prepared me for what was to come. Because, believe me, my journey was far from over. The loss of my father. At 19, I faced one of the most difficult moments of my life. The sudden death of my father, Heinrich. It was a blow, you know? That kind of news you hear, but it takes a while to process that it's real. My father and I have always been very close. He was one of those parents who always had time to listen to their daughter's crazy stories, even when he didn't understand half of them. Losing him like that, suddenly, was like the ground had disappeared from beneath my feet. The first night after he left was the worst. I was lying in my bed, looking at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The room felt strangely empty, even though it was full of my things. And then I felt something different. It was as if my father was there, in the room with me. It wasn't a physical presence, you know? It was more like an energy. I could feel him, but I didn't want to look. I think I was afraid of what I might see. Or maybe fear of not seeing anything and realizing it was just my imagination. Little by little, I started to feel sleepy. But it wasn't a normal sleep. It was as if I was consciously transitioning from wakefulness to sleep. It's hard to explain, but it was like I could see the transition happening. And that's when I saw him. My father. But not as I knew him. He was a figure of light, like the beings I saw in my first near-death experience. We were climbing the stairs to the attic of our house, but the attic was no longer the same. It looked like a simple, somewhat rustic wooden house. At the time, it reminded me of the places of worship we see in old movies. My father started talking to me. He said he had been given permission to see me, to tell me he was okay. I asked if it was a dream, but he insisted it was real. And you know what? I believed him. Because it didn't look like an ordinary dream at all. Then something incredible happened. My father hugged me. Now you may be thinking, but how if they were just figures of light? Yeah, I didn't quite understand either. It wasn't a physical hug, of course. It was more like our energies intertwined. And man, it was the most exciting thing I've ever felt in my life. In that moment, all the pain of loss, all the confusion and sadness I was feeling, it all sort of dissolved. It was replaced by a feeling of peace, of understanding. The impact of experiences on my life. After that meeting with my father, things changed for me. Not in a dramatic way, you know? It's not like I became a completely different person overnight. But something inside me changed. I started to see life's challenges in a different way. Before, I got frustrated when things didn't go the way I wanted. Now I started to see every difficulty as an opportunity for growth. Sounds like coach talk, right? But I swear it's not. It's just that after everything I've seen and experienced, it's become difficult not to think that everything has a greater purpose. Remember that I had asked to return to a family with more resources and access to spirituality? Well, that actually ended up happening. My family was never rich, but we always had enough. And my mother, with all her open mind, gave me all the support to explore my spiritual side. In psychology college, I found myself constantly making bridges between what I learned in classes and my personal experiences. Sometimes it was a challenge not to blurt out, "Oh, but I've seen that when I was out of body," in the middle of a discussion about altered states of consciousness. Can you imagine the faces of my colleagues if I did that? Johan, my skeptical friend, remained an important part of my life. Our discussions about my experiences were always interesting, he with his skepticism and me with my certainties that I couldn't explain. In the end, I think we learned a lot from each other. He helped keep me grounded, as I challenged him to think beyond the obvious. Annalisa Weber continued to be my spiritual mentor for many years. With her, I learned to meditate, to better understand my intuitions, to deal with the energies I felt. She taught me that being sensitive to the spiritual world was not a weakness, but a gift that I could use to help other people. As I grew up and graduated, I began to realize that my mission went beyond just being a traditional therapist. I wanted to help people not only with their everyday problems, but also to understand and accept their own spiritual experiences. You know, a lot of people go through similar things to what I went through, but they're afraid to talk about it. Fear of being called crazy, of being judged. And I wanted to create a space where these people could feel safe to share their stories. Of course, not everything was rosy. There were a lot of people who looked at me the wrong way when I started talking more openly about my experiences. Some professional colleagues even suggested that I should stick to science. But I knew I had found my path. A path that combined psychology and spirituality in a way that made sense to me. And it was like this, with all these experiences and learnings, that I began to shape my career and my adult life. But the universe still had more surprises in store for me. The vision of the future. At 28, I was already established as a therapist in Freiburg. My work was fulfilling, but I felt like there was something more waiting for me. You know that feeling that you're on the right path, but you haven't gotten to where you should yet? One cold winter night, after a particularly tiring day at the office, I decided to meditate. I did this often, but that night was different. As soon as I closed my eyes, I felt that familiar lightness, the same one I experienced in my near-death experiences. Suddenly, I found myself enveloped in light. But it wasn't like other times. I was in some kind of heavenly garden. Imagine the most beautiful garden you have ever seen and multiply it by 1,000. Bright flowers, trees that seemed made of light, and a golden path winding between them. In the center of this incredible garden, there was a being of light waiting for me. You couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, young or old. I just know that when I saw it, I felt an immediate connection. It was as if I had known him forever. This being began to communicate with me, but not with words. It was more like I was sending images and feelings directly to my mind. And what I saw, wow, it was like watching a movie of my future life. I found myself in a large room, full of people. I was talking, sharing my experiences, and I could feel like I was helping these people in some way. Next to me was a man. I didn't know him yet, but in my heart I knew he was my soulmate. The scene changed and I saw children running and playing around us. I felt such great love, a sense of family and belonging that it almost hurt. Later, the same room was transformed into a study and meditation center. People of all ages came to seek guidance and healing. The last scene I saw was of myself, much older, sitting under a huge tree. Young people surrounded me, listening attentively to what I said. At that moment, I felt a profound realization. I understood that my journey was not just about me, but about how I could use my experiences to help others. When I came back from this vision, I felt renewed. It was as if I had found a map to my future. I knew I had a greater purpose, something that went beyond my current work as a therapist. That same night, I started planning. I decided that, in addition to my work at the office, I would start giving talks about spirituality and personal growth. I also started writing a book about my experiences. Look, I know this might sound crazy. Believe in a vision and change your life because of it? But something inside me said it was the right thing to do. And you know what? I couldn't wait to see how this new journey would unfold. Challenges and growth. After that incredible vision, I was super excited to start my new journey. But, as always in life, things weren't as easy as I imagined. I mean, it's not like I can just go around saying, "Hey guys, I had a vision of my future and now I'm going to be a spiritual guru." People would look at me as if I had two heads, right? The first challenge was balancing my work as a therapist with this new path I wanted to follow. I loved my patients and didn't want to abandon them, but I also felt like I needed to expand my reach. It was difficult at first. There were days when I left the office exhausted and still had to prepare material for lectures or write chapters for my book. Another problem was the reaction of some people close to me. Johan, my usual skeptical friend, thought I had gone completely crazy. "Lisa," he told me, "you're a respected therapist. Don't throw your career away because of some crazy dreams." It hurt to hear that from him, but I understood his concern. My mother, always my safe haven, was worried at first. She was afraid that I was exposing myself too much, that people might judge or ridicule me. But over time, she saw how important this was to me and ended up becoming my biggest supporter. The first talks I gave were, well, let's just say they weren't a smashing success. In one of them, only 3 people showed up, and one of them was my mother. There were moments when I thought about giving up, return to my safe and predictable life before. But then I remembered the vision I had, that feeling of purpose, and I found the strength to continue. I started studying more, learning public speaking techniques, and better understanding how to connect with people. Little by little, things got better. The book was also quite a challenge. Putting such personal and profound experiences on paper was not easy. Sometimes I spent hours looking at the computer screen, not knowing how to express what I had experienced. Other times the words flowed as if someone were dictating to me. But do you know what was most difficult? Accepting that not everyone would understand or believe my story. I received harsh criticism from some professional colleagues. Some said I was mixing science with mysticism. Others thought I was having a breakdown. There were moments of doubt, of course. Nights when I wondered if I was making a huge mistake. If I wasn't throwing away years of study and a stable career because of, what? Visions? Experiences that you couldn't even explain properly? But with each person who came to thank me after a talk, with each email I received from someone saying that my book had touched their life, I knew I was on the right path. Little by little, I found my space, my voice. And you know what? This whole process of challenges and growth made me better understand my own experiences. It was as if each obstacle I overcame connected me more deeply with that purpose I had envisioned in my vision. Unexpected encounters. As I continued on this new journey, I began to have some encounters that I can only call synchronicities. You know when things seem to line up so perfectly that you think, this can't be a coincidence? Well, it was more or less like that. At one of my talks, I met a lady called Helga. She came to talk to me afterwards, with tears in her eyes. "Liselott," she said, "I went through something very similar to what you described, but I never had the courage to tell anyone." Right there in the middle of that room full of people, Helga told me about her own near-death experience. It was such a powerful, so intimate moment. I realized that my work was really making a difference, allowing people like Helga to feel safe sharing their stories. Another memorable encounter was with a young man called Marcus. He was a quantum physics student and came to one of my lectures out of curiosity. In the end, he came to talk to me all excited. "You know," he said, "a lot of the things you've talked about consciousness and alternative realities have interesting parallels with some theories of quantum physics." My jaw dropped. Here was science and spirituality meeting in a way I had never imagined. But the most impactful encounter? Oh, that was special. I was at a book fair, promoting my work, when a man approached my stall. Our eyes met and, boom. It was as if time had stopped. I recognized him immediately. He was the man from my vision, the one I had seen as my soulmate. His name was Thomas. He was a psychologist too. but he had specialized in alternative therapies and consciousness studies. We started talking, and it was as if we had known each other for 1,000 years. We exchanged contacts and, well, the rest is history, as they say. With Thomas by my side, my work took on a new dimension. Together, we began to develop workshops that combined traditional psychology with more spiritual approaches. It was exactly as I had seen it in my vision. The two of us, side by side, helping people find balance and growth. These encounters showed me that I was not alone on this journey. There were other people out there who had similar experiences to me, who were looking for answers to the same questions. And most importantly, there were people willing to listen, to learn, to grow. Each new encounter, each new connection, seemed to bring me closer to that future I had envisioned. It was as if the universe was conspiring in my favor, introducing me to exactly the people I needed to meet at the right time. And you know what's most incredible? The more I opened up to these experiences, the more they seemed to happen. It was as if, by fully accepting my path, I had opened a channel for more synchronicities and meaningful encounters to happen in my life. Of course, not everything was rosy. There were still challenges. There were still skeptical and critical people. But now I had a support network. I had people who understood and shared my vision, and that made all the difference. Reflections, and looking to the future today, looking back at this entire incredible journey, I am amazed at how much things have changed. That 3-year-old girl who had her first near-death experience could hardly imagine where she would end up. You know, sometimes I wonder, what if I had ignored all these experiences? What if I had listened to the voices that told me to be normal, to follow a more traditional path? I think I would be living a very different life. Maybe easier in some ways, but certainly not as rich and meaningful. Of course, I still have moments of doubt. There are days when I wake up and think, am I really crazy? But then I remember all the lives I've touched with my work, all the people who have found comfort and direction through my experiences, and I know I'm on the right path. The study and meditation center I saw in my vision? It's coming true. Thomas and I are preparing to open a space where people can come, not just for therapy, but to explore their spiritual side, to better understand their own extraordinary experiences. Johan, my longtime skeptical friend, still looks at me with that, I don't know, huh? Look on my face. But even he admits that what I'm doing has helped a lot of people. He even jokes that if he ever has a near-death experience, he will call me right away. My mother, Greta, is prouder than ever. She always says she knew I had a special purpose since I was little. Seeing her in the front row of my lectures with that smile on her face gives me strength that I can't explain. And the future? Well, he looks as exciting as he does scary. Thomas and I are thinking about having children. The idea of creating little beings and being able to share with them everything I've learned fills me with joy, and I confess a little fear too. How will they deal with a mother who talks to beings of light? I'm also working on a new book. This time not just about my experiences, but gathering stories from other people who have gone through similar things. It's incredible to see how there are so many similar experiences out there. So many people seeking to understand the deeper side of life. You know, looking back, I see that every challenge, every difficult moment, every inexplicable experience, all of this brought me here. It was as if every piece of the puzzle had fallen into place perfectly. Of course, I still have a lot to learn, a lot to explore. The journey is far from over. Sometimes I wonder if I'll have more near-death experiences, if I'll receive more visions of the future. Part of me hopes so. Another part is a little apprehensive. But whatever the universe has in store for me, I know I'm ready. What moves me most is thinking about all the people I will still meet, all the stories I will hear. Every time someone comes up to me, eyes shining, and says, I've been there too, I feel like I'm fulfilling my purpose. And for you who are reading or listening to this now, I want to say, don't be afraid of your extraordinary experiences. Don't let anyone tell you that you are crazy or that you are imagining things. Our world is much more vast and mysterious than we can understand. If you feel like you have a calling, a mission, don't ignore it. Don't. It can be scary to take a different path, but believe me, it's worth it. I remember that vision I had of my older self, sitting under a tree, sharing wisdom with young people. I don't know exactly when or how this will happen, but I know I'm on the right path. And who knows? Perhaps one day you will be among these people seeking your own truth, exploring the mysteries of life. The journey continues, and I'm excited to see what comes next. Because if there's one thing I've learned from all these experiences, it's that life is much richer, much deeper, and much more extraordinary than we could ever imagine. And that, my friends, is the most exciting thing of all. So, what did you think of this incredible story? Leave your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Activate the notification bell to be notified with each new video. Let's bring more people the hope that there is life beyond what the eyes can see.